What's up, Pamela?
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. I was thinking we could just dive right in here. Do you mind telling everybody a little bit about what you do?
So, I call myself a small business optimizer. You can think of it as a short term fractional chief of staff. So, I help with some operations, some communications, staff training and development, and a few other of those behind the scenes housekeeping kind of things.
I know that you were a teacher for a little while and just kind of made a big jump because I don't think you told me earlier that you didn't really you didn't have any entrepreneurial aspirations, right?
Not at all. This was a complete surprise. So, I was a high school history teacher for 15 years. But a few years ago now, 2017, a dear friend at the time was a solopreneur, a realtor working with a business coach. Her coach told her it was time for her to bring on some staff and to start hosting like client appreciation events, all those kinds of things. My friend was overwhelmed and stressed and didn't know how she was going to handle that in addition to all her other tasks. I didn't think much of it. I certainly didn't think I was starting a business. I just thought I was helping out a friend. It was about to be summer break. And so I said, why doesn't she just bring me on for the summer? So naturally, my teacher brain just kicked in and I started documenting and creating templates and checklists and automations. That way, when the fall came and it was time for me to go back to school, it was so easy for her to slot somebody in because we already had that framework made. So we kept building, and through the years now, she's now built out a team. She's got 3 sub agents. She routinely hits the Keller Williams Platinum designation, which is their highest ranking award. And everyone kept asking her, "What's your secret? What are you doing?" And she kept passing my name along. So I did it as a side hustle for a bit. And then 4 years ago now, I stepped fully into it as my full-time career.
How important do you think having that initial those initial projects were to building up the confidence that you needed to make the full jump?
I think it was important to have those years where I was doing both and kind of a side hustler. It built my confidence. It built my portfolio of the things I've done. And I'll be honest, I was able to kind of save up a lot of money, which then you need when it is that feast or famine entrepreneurship cycle. So having that, that stored up money makes a big difference, even though that's a part that is not the most exciting part of the entrepreneurship journey. And people don't always touch on that. But I think that's what makes the difference for somebody who can keep it with it rather than somebody who has to jump back into a full-time position.
Is there like one specific time period or month that you can think back to that was specifically tougher?
Well, I mean, I think 2025 has been a tough year for everybody. You hear it's record layoffs. There's a lot of people who are now jumping into freelance or contract work because the full-time jobs have kind of disappeared, and the people who do have still work are kind of being very careful with their spending. So I would say this year in general has been kind of lean, kind of unusual.
What are some of the things that you've learned based off of what you do that's maybe helped you get through the tougher times?
As an entrepreneur, as a founder, you've got to be really smart about how you use your time, because obviously that's your number one resource. So it is so important that you are spending your time on those income generating activities, not just the stuff that's fun, not just the stuff that's in your comfort zone. So maybe that is making DMs, maybe that is attending networking events, having those tough conversations with a mentor versus sometimes people are working in their business, but they're playing around in Canva or they're posting on social media, but it's not necessarily moving towards a certain goal.
When you think back, did you kind of skip that period? Because I know that's something I dealt with a lot and still do, especially when I was first starting out, right? Like I'd spend hours in Google Sheets or like you said, Canva. Was that something you struggled with at all, or was it just completely natural for you since, I mean, it's kind of what you do, right?
Yeah, I think we all go through it. There were times where I've done the same thing, and it was, oh, well, no, I worked really hard today, but I was designing a business card or I was picking a logo or colors. And those things are important, but they're not putting money in your pocket. And so I think it is recognizing those habits and kind of capping them, saying, okay, I'm going to spend an hour on this, but maybe only after I've reached out to 5 people or whatever. You're kind of making those frameworks with yourself and setting some limits and some parameters because you do need to do those things. And a lot of it is you have to learn. Like the only way you learn to do the graphic design is to play around. So it is important, but you've got to balance the time.
Let's say that, let's say you're talking to someone who's struggling with that, right? What would you say specifically for them? What's the first step they can take to set that time for themselves?
So something that, I used in my time as a teacher that I think is universal is time blocking. So looking at your calendar and kind of saying, okay, I'm going to only take calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and maybe during this set time. Whereas Wednesdays, I'm going to, attend an in-person event, or those are the days I'm going to really do my deep work for whatever it is you do for your clients. Something else I suggest to everybody, honestly, regardless of where they are in their journey, is what I call a CEO hour. Usually I suggest you do that on like a Friday afternoon. And what it is kind of cleaning out the week, going through, making sure there's no loose ends that you've left. So maybe that's going through checking DMs, looking at screenshots, going through your emails, making sure that there's nothing that you have forgotten or overlooked, either handling it or making your list so that way you can close out for the weekend, take your mind out of your business, and then Monday when you get started again, you've set yourself up for that success because everything is right there. So, or, even just like logging your mileage, or you're tracking your receipts, all those little pieces that we think, oh, we'll do that someday. If you build that habit on ideally Fridays, then things aren't getting lost in the cracks, and it really sets you up to hit the ground running on Monday.
When you think back to all the people that you've worked with, what's the most common little thing that tends to get disorganized the most, if that makes any sense?
It is the idea of operations, how they do what they do. And for so many of us, it's, well, I got it all up here, right? We tell ourselves that. And someday when I have time, then I'll document it, or I'll document when I am hiring or I have a staff. The earlier you start capturing things, the easier it's going to be. And doing it even for yourself. Because let's say it is maybe setting up an email sequence. You don't do that every day. So whenever you go to do it, there's so many tools to capture, whether that's your AI note taker, you can use Scribe, you can make a Loom video or something equivalent. Capturing that even for yourself so you have it. And that way the next time you go to set up that email sequence, you're not starting back at zero. You're not like, okay, where did I go? What was my login? How did I do this? Capturing those early things and building out that library makes a huge, huge difference.
I kept forgetting that we were on a podcast, and I'm going to use that for myself because that's pretty helpful.
I'm glad.
I want to go back a little bit to your personal journey. Can you think of a specific time when things were specifically tough for you?
So I had left the classroom in the spring of 2021. And that first year, I was kind of just sort of working off of the referrals from that original realtor. And I didn't really think of it as a true business. I thought I was just doing it until a job posting came my way or another big idea came. But at that 1 year mark, I realized I think I really do want to put effort into this and care and be a little more vulnerable and say, yes, I'm really doing this. So it was a mentality shift. It was a little bit of my friends, my family, everyone who saw me step out of the security of teaching and really saying, no, I'm really going to give entrepreneurship a shot. Plus, then I had to really start extending myself and connecting with people outside of those existing referrals to build my client list, to meet new people, start going to events, start introducing myself as an entrepreneur. And that's a tricky time, because it's one thing to think it in your head. It's another to say it out loud and to show up in a room of strangers who have established businesses, who are, making all this money, whose names are well known, and to have that confidence in, no, I'm your peer. I'm an entrepreneur. I bring value to the table. That was a challenge for me.
Did it come fairly naturally, or did it take some time for you?
If you can stand in front of a room of freshmen and talk to them about the French Revolution, you can do just about anything. So that was kind of how I would pump myself up. But there is that imposter syndrome that I'm not a real business owner. I have never taken business classes because entrepreneurship wasn't the path I ever thought I'd go in. So there is a learning curve where I don't have corporate experience. I don't know those buzzwords. I don't, all of that. And so there was having to kind of fake it till you make it and learn to use those words and find the equivalents of, okay, a KPI is a goal. I gotcha. Like those kind of things.
Yeah. So how did you market yourself? Like, was it always just word of mouth?
At first, that's how it all started. And then I started going to some local in-person meetups. And then from there, it wasn't, I had like an Instagram, but I don't know, that's not really my strength. And it didn't really take off. And then truly a big difference was when I started showing up consistently on LinkedIn, which was about a year ago. And so that has made a huge difference. In both ways, in meeting and connecting with people outside of my local area, but also when people from my area see my LinkedIn account, they get a better understanding of who I am. They see my credibility. They see I'm connected to other people they know. And that has helped strengthen those in-person relationships as well.
There's something you said about your family kind of pushed you along a little bit.
No, my family was very risk averse. And they really couldn't believe that I wanted to do something so vulnerable, so risky. But I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and they finally get it. They understand that I like that uncertainty and that I'm enjoying this in a way. It's just stretching me, and I'm able to grow and challenge myself in ways that I wasn't when I was in my previous career.
So if there's anyone who might just be graduating high school maybe, or who's struggling with maybe a certain family member, and you were talking to them, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say life is long, and that the idea of picking one major and having that be your career and retiring at the end of a 35 years of service to one employer, that doesn't exist anymore, and that's okay. So what I think is so important is to follow your inner knowing. You don't have to have everything all figured out, but to follow those strengths, keep your eyes open, see what feels like a full body yes, and follow that for a time. And then you never know. Something I say, my advice to just about everybody is the idea that skills are transferable and everything is learnable. So like, I'm certainly not using my degree in the traditional way, but it was still the right choice for me. And I do use it. Those skills are helping now in ways that I would have never imagined. So it's okay if you pick a major and you change it, or you pick a school and you switch schools, or you decide school's not for you. All those things are just going to be stepping stones on your path, and you will see how it all comes together.
A lot of people see things like black and white. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got a degree, that's what you're stuck with for the rest of your career, like you said, or
after about 5 years, a degree doesn't have as much value. Someone with a marketing degree from 10 years ago, that's not what marketing looks like at all. So it is not that it doesn't have value, but it's not a guarantee. So that's it, is that we can use skills, that there's jobs and roles and experiences that we can't even imagine that will exist 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And it's about just staying flexible and always learning and using what you have to build upon for whatever your next step is.
I'm going to switch it up a little bit here. What's your favorite part of your job?
Again, I have a teacher's heart. I will always have a teacher's heart. I love meeting people where they're at, and then kind of helping them untangle the mess. So it's kind of like a puzzle. Is the first step. Anybody who works with me, we do a road mapping session. They don't have to come with all the answers. They don't have to tell me their main pain points. We're just going to spill it all out. And then from that, one of my best skills, and actually I have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction, which can be mapping out a course, but it's also road mapping your brain and road mapping your business. So we will decide, here's the things I think we should do first, here's what we should do second, here's what tools, what automations, what templates, and from that, helping lighten people's burdens and build a business that makes sense for them and their brain and the way their mind works. 72% of entrepreneurs either have a mental health condition or are neurodivergent. That is not my experience, but that is what I'm traditionally trained in. I have a whole toolkit of ways to approach and help set people up for success, regardless of how their brain is wired. So I love taking that knowledge and that skill set and finding solutions that are the right fit, rather than somebody saying, okay, you signed up, you're going to learn the Pamela King 3-step system. That doesn't work. That's not going to be effective for them, and certainly not in the long haul. So I like to do the opposite, learn them, what they like, how their brain works. And from that, we're going to create those steps, that roadmap, and really give them some framework for a long-term success.
I know in public schools, because I got ADHD, so I kind of experienced a little bit of that.
Sure.
The way they teach is so like, fit in a box, right? Is there anything from your time teaching that you saw and motivated you to take this approach?
Well, I think, every school is going to be different. I will say I was fortunate. The school I worked at, part of why I feel so confident about this is that they did train us. We did have options. We did know ways to reach our different students and their different modalities. So I love taking that and then taking it even further, especially because so many entrepreneurs are getting these diagnoses later in life. So they are no longer in school and they don't have those tips and tricks and flexibility the way that maybe somebody who's younger, who's had teachers who are better understanding of it. But I think what's important is what we call metacognition, which is thinking about thinking. So like if you and I were working together, I would ask you, well, what's your perfect day look like? What are the skills, if you want to really have a successful week, what are you going to do? And you being able to tell me, oh, I need music, or I need a timer, or I work best in the morning, or I need to be at a coffee shop, or that where yourself, that's the gold. And then we're going to take that inner knowing and then use that to build out what makes sense for you.
So just really like becoming clearer on, like you said, getting to know yourself better.
Absolutely. You're going to try it, we're going to, do you need headphones? Do you need absolute silence? Is it nighttime? Is it not? Does using a timer help you, or does that cause more anxiety? All of that, kind of testing those things out and seeing what sticks. And then from there, building out what you want it to look like.
Do you find that a lot of your clients tend to be more neurodivergent, I guess, because of just the organizational struggles that sometimes we struggle with?
I mean, it can be. Like I said, that's why such a high percentage of people who are entrepreneurs, it is so attractive to neurodivergent brains, because you get to have that flexibility, whereas maybe working in a corporate setting doesn't really fit for you. So I think it happens just because of that, higher likelihood. And that's what kind of person who's attracted to running their own business and making their own, their own rules. But it doesn't have to be. A lot of these are just good practice, best practice for anyone, regardless of diagnosis, because it's all just learning yourself, learning your own preferences, and then finding ways that are sustainable.
When you think to anyone that you're working with, what are some strengths that you've noticed from them that has really helped them?
Something that I love is that the clients that I end up working with are usually a visionary. They have a goal, they think outside the box, they have big dreams and aspirations, and they want to go get it and do the fun things. And I love that. And so they're the visionary and I like to be the implementer. And I think in general, that's what you're going to find, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. Some of us are more the support staff, the behind the scenes people. We're the ones who are the video editors, building the building blocks, whereas there is somebody who is that visionary, that architect. And what I love about that is because they don't always have to be a typical thinker. They're not going to only follow the existing pathway. They're going to make their own shortcuts. They're going to see something that other people wouldn't see. They're going to dream something that is outside of the typical or the norm, because they aren't constrained in the same way that perhaps someone who's a little more concrete might be.
Gosh, now now my head, now I'm thinking like so many different things. Ugh. What would you say to someone who right now is working on their own, right? Who doesn't have somebody who's more back end oriented in their life? Like, right, they're more of the visionary, but they
Sure.
still need to get that stuff done. How do you think they can kind of work with that?
It's to build out those CEO blocks of time, whether that's an hour or
Right.
2 hours, but to kind of force yourself, because if you're just running on the vision, that's how you end up racking up 60-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks. You have all these things partially started, but nothing's really gaining any traction. And that's what can be deflating and ultimately cause things to fall apart. So working on that self-discipline to kind of develop and make it easier on yourself. You don't have to restart every time. If you're making a template, if you're reaching out to somebody, make a really great email that you can then copy paste multiple times. If you start keeping an Excel sheet or a Google Sheets on, here's my contact information. You don't have to pay for a CRM, but rather than trying to keep everybody's names and how you know them and all that kind of stuff, document it, make it easier on yourself. And I know those aren't exciting tasks to do, but it will save you time and stress and energy in the long run. And it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the other thing. Give up perfectionism. Anything is better than nothing. Progress is progress. So even if it is not the prettiest spreadsheet, or it's, you just kind of stop and go with it, keep going, keep picking it back up rather than saying, oh, I stopped updating that, it's done. Don't do that to yourself. And then that will build. And soon enough, when you can, bring on some staff who will do the back end stuff for you so that you can really stay in your zone of genius.
So my next question was going to be, how do you know when it is good enough, right? But
Yeah.
would you say, is that your answer, to just continuously be working on it?
All of us are going to always be growing and be iterating and getting better. Very rarely is anything perfect and it's done and we set it aside and we never touch it again. So I think it's okay to be a work in progress. And especially right now in the modern era, things are growing and changing and adapting so fast. A dangerous thing would be to put it to the side and say, now it's perfect. And now I can finally move to step 2 and then step 3. That's never going to happen. We're all always getting better. Our businesses are growing. Our relationships with people are growing. Tech capabilities are different so quickly that do the best you can, keep working on it, and, just follow up with all those pieces.
Back to more personal stuff again. In 10 years, what do you want to be doing? Like, what's your dreams right now? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, for me, I don't want 10 years from now to be perfectly laid out. That's part of why I stepped out of school, because I could tell you 10 years from now, if you said, oh, what would you be doing October 10th? I could be like, well, that'd be chapter 9, French Revolution. For me, something that I really love is the flexibility, specifically time flexibility. And that is the luxury I love the most about entrepreneurship. So I want to be working where I can work remotely, where I can connect with people virtually, where I can still be doing work that lights me up and I find it exciting, but that I don't have to do 40-hour weeks, that I don't have to follow anybody else's framework, that I have the flexibility that if my car needs to go into the shop, I can work from the repair shop lounge. That to me has so much value and flexibility and is truly luxurious, versus saying, oh, I'm going to be in a cabana in Bali and on my personal jet. Like those are not the goals I hold for myself.
And do you think it's important to actually love what you're, like, the actual work itself? Like, I know a lot of people say that, right? Do what you love. But do you think you're at an advantage because you really do enjoy working with the people that you work with and doing the type of work that you do?
I absolutely do, but I also want to acknowledge the privilege in that statement. I think not everyone's you're not gonna love every piece, and you're certainly not gonna love every day. I think it's important to find parts of what you do that you can take pride in or love, If that's possible, that's wonderful, but that doesn't have to be everyone's experience. And to just chase what you're loving, I think can set you up for disappointment down the road. So I think it's important to find parts that you feel good about, that you maybe have a deeper meaning. So it's, like a realtor I work for that I adore. It's not that she loves negotiating house prices, but for her, she loves helping people find their home. And that kind of mindset switch has really helped her, where she can stay motivated and keep doing it even when things are hard or times are tough or a deal gets kind of dicey. Finding that as that inner motivator, I think helps, but it's okay if you don't love every piece every day.
So it's kind of like a mindset shift, right? Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot. So for example, for this podcast, like I could be, I get to talk to really great people and learn a whole lot from really smart people like you, right? Instead of just focusing on the more like tactical, I got to edit videos, right?
Right. Or, I want this many followers or subscribers by January. Like, and maybe, like, let's say, the day you hit 10K followers, that's going to be a great feeling. But is that going to carry you through months and years? And maybe the other thing is too, I'll say from my personal journey, it's okay if you step away from something. Like I taught for 15 years. That's always going to be, I would never go back and undo it. I wouldn't change that. And it doesn't mean that I was a failure, because at the end of 15 years, I said, it's time for me to switch. It's time for me to do something else. So I think that's important too, to not deny that part of yourself, but it's okay to say, I want to do something different, or it's time for me to step into something that's going to be a different kind of challenge.
How do you know when to do that?
I will say that kind of idea doesn't just pop up once. It's going to keep showing up and showing up. Something I heard that I love is that anxiety screams, but intuition whispers. And I think that's important, because that was in the back of my head for a long time was, well, what if I did something different? Well, what could that be? What else do I want to do? Or, hey, this is kind of fun. What if I got to do this more? And that idea is going to come up again and again and again. But the practical side of me will also say that you can't just chase those little wispy ideas. You need to have something concrete behind it. You have to maybe do some research, or have lined up some clients, or really sit with it, do the pros and cons, so that way you're not just chasing.
Do you actually mind saying that one more time? Intuition screamed, or
yeah, it's anxiety screams, intuition whispers. So when you have that feeling and it's like, but what if it doesn't work? But what if you're a failure? Well, what if you never sign another client again? That's that anxiety, and it can be really powerful. And you can think, oh gosh, that's my inner knowing. Not so much. The inner knowing, the true intuition, is that quieter voice that says, like, even if I'm a failure, even if I don't sign this client, or even if I have a bad month, I'll be okay, or let's keep going, or how can we do this? That's what I think is really powerful.
So something that you'd be okay with maybe not exactly going your way, that you just keep coming back to.
I was gonna say, if it keeps coming back and you've really kind of laid it out, the pros and the cons, the likelihood of, kind of doing some market research and all those kinds of things. So I'm certainly not saying be foolish and chase every, goofy idea, but if it keeps coming back to you and you sit with it and it feels right in that deep inner knowing, it's worth exploring.
That is very helpful. All right. So I'm going to ask one final question here.
Great.
Let's pretend for a second that your mind was completely wiped and you could only remember one lesson or insight that you've picked up on your journey. What would you carry with you, and why?
So I'm going to go with that everything is learnable and skills are transferable, because I do think that's so important and so universal. So just because you didn't take traditional business classes doesn't mean I can't learn business. Just because I don't know anything about marketing doesn't mean I can't learn marketing. And that skills can also be transferred, that my understanding from my time teaching can help me with entrepreneurs, can also help me with my own business, my own entrepreneurship journey. And that 5-10 years from now, who knows if I'm even going to still be a small business optimizer. I might then have taken that and rolled that into something, which becomes something else, which becomes something else. And I think, and again, from my time teaching, it was so much pressure sometimes to figure out what you want to be when you grow up. What's going to be your major? What college are you going to go to? And that can be so paralyzing because you think, well, what if I pick wrong? I don't really think there is a wrong answer. I think everything you're going to use and experience, and you're going to bring it with you. And if you allow yourself, you can then take the best from those experiences and put those together to build your next step forward.
Awesome. I think that's actually a great spot to end. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn is where I am the most active. We could put my link in the show notes as something that might make it easier. I'd love to connect with people, answer any questions. I also have an offer. You can download a time audit, and you can then use that tool to kind of analyze how your day is gone versus what you thought it was going to be. Or my gift to you is you can book a 1 hour with me, and I'll help you look through that, and we can kind of sort through that data and find those sneaky time thieves. And so, those would be great ways to find me on there. And I look forward to connecting with everyone.